For 65 years he was a ghost, a question mark at the heart of Philadelphia. He was a small, silent victim of a crime so cold, it seemed frozen in time. He was known only as the boy in the box, his identity erased, his story buried under decades of dead ends and frustrating theories. In the winter of 1957, a child was found tossed aside in a cardboard box, his life stolen before it had a chance to begin. He became a fixture in the city's psyche, a haunting reminder of a case that refused to be solved. And then the impossible happened. Science gave him back his name, Joseph Augustus Zarelli. But in solving one mystery, an even bigger, more terrifying one was revealed. We now know who he was. But the world is still asking, who killed him and why? On February 25, 1957, a young college student checking his muskrat traps in a wooded patch of land in Fox Chase, Philadelphia, stumbled upon a large cardboard box. He didn't think much of it at first. Days later, after hearing a news report about a missing girl, he went back, thinking it might be a clue. He peered inside. What he saw wasn't a doll, and it wasn't the missing girl. It was the naked, bruised, and frighteningly small body of a young boy. He was wrapped in a plaid blanket, his body a map of horror. This discovery would kick off one of the longest and most baffling homicide investigations in American history, a story that begins not with a clue, but with a deep and deafening silence. The initial investigation was a study in contradictions. The boy, estimated to be between 4 and 6 years old, was severely malnourished. His body was covered in bruises, the result of multiple blows that police believed to be the cause of death. Yet, despite the obvious signs of violent abuse, there were also signs of recent care. His fingernails were neatly trimmed, and his hair had been crudely but recently cut, with clippings still clinging to his body. It was as if his killer, in a bizarre moment of remorse or a calculated act of deception, had tried to clean him up. There were other strange marks. He had several small surgical scars on his ankle, groin, and under his chin, suggesting he'd received medical care at some point in his short life. His hands and feet were wrinkled, a sign he might have been submerged in water shortly before or after his death. The box itself offered a clue, or so it seemed. It was a bassinet box from a J.C. Penney store in nearby Upper Darby. But trying to find the person who bought it proved to be another dead end. Philadelphia police launched a massive publicity campaign. They put the boy's postmortem photograph on posters all across the city and in gas bills sent to every home. The story was picked up by newspapers nationwide. The image was heartbreaking and unforgettable. A small, cherubic face that seemed to be at peace, hiding the violence that ended his life. Surely someone would recognize this child. A parent, a grandparent, a neighbor, a friend. But no one did. No missing persons report ever matched his description. It was as if he had never existed, a child who had just appeared in a box belonging to no one. The city and the investigators who took his case were haunted. When it came time to lay him to rest, they buried him in a potter's field. His headstone had the only name they could give him, America's unknown child. The years that followed became a long, frustrating parade of theories, each a promising light that ultimately flickered out. The case became a magnet for speculation, attracting psychics, amateur detectives, and people with fragmented, often unreliable memories. Investigators chased down hundreds of leads, each one as thin as the last. One early theory focused on a foster home just a mile and a half from where the body was found. A psychic brought in by police led them straight to the property, a lead that seemed compelling until all the children in the home were accounted for. Another theory suggested the boy might have been a refugee from the 1956 Hungarian Revolution, which would explain the lack of local records, but that also led nowhere. The leads just got stranger. Was he a child kidnapped from a Long Island supermarket in 1955? Was he connected to a pair of traveling carnival workers? Every possibility was carefully investigated and one by one ruled out. The case went cold, but it never really went away. It was passed down through generations of homicide detectives, each one feeling the weight of the small, nameless boy. In 1998, his body was exhumed for the first time, hoping that new DNA technology could finally break the silence. While the attempt didn't give them an immediate identification, it did keep the case in the public eye. It also brought a new level of dignity to the boy. His remains were moved from the Potter's Field to Ivy Hill Cemetery, into a donated plot under a weeping cherry tree. Organizations like the Vidic Society, a volunteer group of forensic professionals dedicated to solving cold cases, refused to let him be forgotten and held annual remembrances at his grave. Then, in 2002, a shocking story came out. A woman known only as M, or Martha, claimed her abusive mother had purchased the boy from his biological parents in 1954. She said her mother had kept him in their basement, and that one day, in a fit of rage after he threw up, she had beaten him to death. The story was horrifically plausible and had details that seemed to line up with the evidence. Investigators found the woman credible, but her history of mental illness made her an unreliable witness, and her story could never be independently proven. It was another dead end, another ghost story in a case already full of them. For decades, it seemed the boy in the box was fated to remain America's unknown child, his identity and the name of his killer lost to time forever. For 65 years the case was frozen. Then, forensic science thought it out. The same technology that had revolutionized cold cases across the country, investigative genetic genealogy, was about to do the impossible. In 2019, investigators got a court order to exhume the boy's remains for a second time. This time they were armed with cutting-edge DNA extraction techniques. The process was slow and difficult. After more than 6 decades in the ground, the boy's DNA was severely degraded. Dr. Colleen Fitzpatrick, a forensic scientist who worked on the case, described it as being like confetti. It took over 2 years of careful work to piece together a usable genetic profile. But they did it. That profile was uploaded to public genealogy databases, huge digital libraries of DNA that people had voluntarily submitted to search for their own family roots. Then they got a hit. It wasn't a parent or a sibling, but a distant cousin who had used an at-home DNA kit. From that one fragile link, genealogists started building a family tree, working backward through generations. They identified the boy's likely mother, and with that information, they got a court order for her records. There, among the official documents, was what they had been looking for over half a century, a birth certificate. It listed the boy's name, Joseph Augustus Zarelli, born on January 13, 1953. It also listed the names of his parents. After 65 years, 9 months and 13 days, the boy in the box was no longer a symbol. He was a person. On December 8, 2022, the Philadelphia Police Department held a press conference that sent shockwaves around the world. They announced that America's unknown child had a name. For 65 years, the story of America's unknown child has haunted this community, said Police Commissioner Danielle Outlaw. He has never been forgotten. The boy who lived near 61st and Market Streets in West Philadelphia was finally known. The news was a stunning achievement, a testament to the tireless dedication of generations of investigators and the incredible power of modern science. But as the world learned Joseph's name, the relief was instantly overshadowed by a darker, more urgent question. Now that we know who he was, the hunt for his killer could truly begin. Giving Joseph Zarelli his name back was like finding a single page from a book that had been torn apart and scattered to the wind. The identification opened a new chapter, but one filled with just as many blank spaces. Investigators revealed that both of Joseph's biological parents were deceased, but he had living half-siblings. Out of respect for their privacy, authorities haven't publicly named the parents, but this new information provided a crucial starting point for the ongoing homicide investigation. The Zarelli family, police learned, had lived in West Philadelphia. But what was life like for young Joseph in that house? What circumstances led to a 4-year-old boy being subjected to such horrific violence and then abandoned in a field miles away? Police Captain Jason Smith spelled out the new challenge. "I don't know what the neighbors knew or didn't know," he said, urging anyone who might have lived in that area in the 1950s to search their memories. He expressed hope that someone now in their 70s or 80s might remember the little boy. The public, which had been captivated by the case for decades, reacted with a mix of celebration and renewed obsession. Internet sleuths immediately launched their own investigations, flooding online forums with theories and speculation, some even incorrectly identifying and harassing people with the same last name. It was a modern twist on an old case, a digital flood of tips and theories that police had to sift through. While police have said they have suspicions about who might be responsible, they've been careful not to release specifics, calling it irresponsible to do so while the investigation is active. The core of the mystery remains. We know Joseph had a family, a home, a place in the world. But we don't know how he fell through the cracks so completely that his disappearance went unreported and his murder went unsolved. The surgical scars are still an enigma, hinting at a life that included medical care, even as it was filled with abuse. Was he with his parents when he died? Was he with someone else? The story of the boy in the box was the story of a nameless child. The story of Joseph Zarelli is the story of a family, a neighborhood, and a secret that has been kept for a lifetime. The identification of Joseph Zarelli is a huge step forward, but it's not the end of the story. The Philadelphia Police Department considers this an active and open homicide investigation. There is still a $20,000 reward for information that leads to an arrest and conviction in this case. While the people directly responsible may no longer be alive, the truth of what happened to Joseph still matters. It matters to his surviving family, to the investigators who never gave up, and to a city that adopted him as its own. What are your theories on what truly happened to Joseph? Who do you think was responsible for the final brutal act, and who stood by and did nothing? Share your thoughts respectfully in the comments below. Let's keep the conversation going because for the first time in 65 years, we can finally seek justice not for an unknown child but for Joseph. On January 13, 2023, on what would have been his 70th birthday, a new headstone was placed at Joseph Augustus Zarelli's grave. For the first time, it bore his name and his picture. The title America's Unknown Child was gone, replaced by the identity that science had so painstakingly recovered. It was a moment of profound closure and, at the same time, a stark reminder of the justice that is still missing. The case of Joseph Zarelli is a powerful story of two extremes. It's a stunning success for forensic science, a beacon of hope for the countless other cold cases waiting for a similar breakthrough. In fact, inspired by this success, authorities in Philadelphia have started the process of exhuming other unidentified bodies buried near Joseph, hoping DNA can give them back their names too. But the case also remains one of America's most haunting unsolved murders. The identity of his killer and the motive for such cruelty might be lost to time. The people with the answers may have already taken their secrets to the grave. Still, investigators remain hopeful. They believe that someone somewhere still knows something. A memory, a story passed down, a guilty conscience that has been eating away at them for decades. Joseph Zarelli is no longer America's forgotten child. He has been found. His story, once a whisper, is now being told. But it's an unfinished story. It hangs on a final, terrible question that echoes through the years, waiting for an answer. We know his name. We know his face. But we still don't know who was responsible for the unlivable horrors he experienced in his very short life. And until we do, true justice for Joseph Augustus Zarelli remains just out of reach. Joseph Augustus Zarelli's name restored after 65 years shows that no story is too cold and no victim too small to matter. From that snowy woodland box to a headstone beneath cherry blossoms, his journey proves that persistence, science, and compassion can give the forgotten a voice and spark new hope for justice. If you believe every life deserves to be remembered, like this video, subscribe to Echoes of the Unsolved, and hit the bell so you never miss a single revelation. Get ready, our next episode dives into another chilling cold case, and you won't want to miss what we uncover next.